A strange spiralling white light was spotted in the early morning sky over Sydney, with even sceptical witnesses wondering if it was a UFO.
They were last seen on the beach with a tall man, and that's the best description police have ever had of him.
More than 17 years after Harold Holt disappeared into raging surf at Cheviot Beach, his widow has finally revealed his last romantic words.
Shocking, terrifying, mesmerising. That's the way a number of Australians have described their alleged encounter with the Yowie.
It's time for the Weird Crap in Australia podcast. Welcome to the very first episode of Weird Crap in Australia. I'm your host, Matthew Soul, and joining me is Holly Hunt.
Hey.
Now, if you've listened to any episodes on the Modern Meltdown podcast network, you may have heard us. I'm the host of the TV Breakdown as well as the Modern Meltdown podcast. And
I'm the host of Beyond the Words, a podcast about writing and editing books.
Now, both of us have had this interest in mythology, paranormal activity, weird murder mysteries, true crime, all of these sort of things. And the thing about that is once you start to research it, once you start to listen to a bunch of podcasts, you realise that there is a lot of weird crap in Australia, hence the title of the podcast.
And not all of it happens in the outback too, so beware if you're living in suburban Sydney.
Yeah, for a lot of the listeners who are tuning in from all across the world, the idea of the outback serial killer, the disappearances in the great beyond, all of these things, although do exist, and we're going to be covering them in later episodes, there's a lot of weird stuff that happens out in the suburbs as well, and we're talking the big cities. So that's our background. We love to do podcasts. We kind of love paranormal stuff. Holly especially loves true crime, and so do I. And so we thought, hey, let's give this a crack, but let's keep it entirely contained to Australia. So we've got the first 30 episodes plotted out already, and we haven't done any other research on more episodes, but there's so much stuff out there that I think we could be doing this podcast for quite some time. So I hope you enjoy. Now, Holly, take it from here. What's the very first episode of Weird Crap in Australia going to be about?
Well, for those Australians who are listening, you will have heard the story of Prime Minister Harold Holt and his disappearance off the Victorian coast back in 1967.
Now, just to jump in here for, again, people listening overseas, a Prime Minister is our leader of the country. So in America, you have a president. In Russia, you have a dictator. So everyone has a different leader, but in Australia we call them the Prime Minister because our government is operated by a group of ministers. The Prime Minister is the leader of those ministers, the leader of the country. And does he still directly answer to the Queen in some cases? Are we still doing that?
Prime Minister, Governor General, Queen.
So the bullshit continues on.
For those who can't tell, Matthew is a Republican, but we'll skip ahead on that, shall we?
Yep.
All right. So a quick in-depth into Mr. Harold Holt and his early years. He spent 32 years in Parliament. He was the 17th Prime Minister, and he was the first Prime Minister of Australia to actually be born in the Commonwealth of Australia.
Yeah, so beforehand, again, a brief on Australia's history is that we were essentially a prison colony. So the majority of people that were inhabiting Australia were actually sent from Britain, and it was an amalgamation of Irish, Scottish, Polish, pretty much any prisoner that they happened to have in their gulags, and they needed to get them out because the prisons were being overcrowded in England. So they just discovered this big mass of country and we're like, fuck it, we'll turn it into a massive prison colony. And that's essentially how Australia was born, which meant that once Australia actually became self-governing, the prime ministers, at least for the, first three?
16.
The first 16 were not, quote-unquote, born Australians. They were British. It was a bit of a big deal.
So he was born in 1908 and he spent 32 years in Parliament, with only 22 months of those actually acting Prime Minister. Now, he was sworn in on Australia Day 1966. That's January 26 for those who don't know Australia. And he disappeared on the 17th of December 1967 while he was swimming off, again, the Victorian coast.
So this was unprecedented, and they weren't really prepared for what was going to happen. No one had ever had... Like, in the case of a straight-up death, you know what is needed. So we have to go back to an election. At the time, like, the Deputy Prime Minister would be sworn in as acting Prime Minister, and it's all good. But the problem with Harold Holt is he disappeared, technically.
His body was never recovered.
And that's where the mystery, of course, comes into it.
Now, there's a little bit of backstory to this. In September of 1967, that's 3 months before he disappeared, Harold Holt suffered a reoccurring shoulder injury, and his doctor requested that he not swim or play tennis until it healed. He was prescribed strong painkillers, including morphine, and ignored his doctor.
So that was like just the two specific things: no tennis, no swimming. Everything else
because
was on
of the
table.
shoulder movement.
What about football?
He wasn't a football player. He was in his 60s, I think it was.
Just playing tennis and going out for a swim.
Actually, he would have been 59.
So do you think when he went out there swimming that day, he had taken his morphine in the morning?
It's incredibly likely that he was drugged up a little bit, yes.
Okay, maybe that's a fact. We'll remember that for later, once we start getting into the theories.
A little bit earlier in the month, he had actually collapsed in Parliament owing to a vitamin deficiency, that in quotation marks, leading others in Parliament to wonder if he had a heart condition. This could also have contributed to his vanishing.
So, at the time, the dude's got a very, very sore shoulder. He's taking morphine, and there's a possibility that he randomly passes out.
And...
I think this is kind of an open and shut case.
And while he was diving in mid-1967, he almost drowned due to a leaking snorkel. That means fluid on the lungs. That means a little bit of a problem breathing.
So, just to recap this, possible heart condition, taking morphine, shoulder injury, possible fluid on the lungs, which caused long-term breathing problems.
Yeah.
I think I have an answer for what happened, but we'll continue on.
Now, let's go down to the beach itself, Cheviot Beach. It was named after a ship which broke on the rocks nearby and sank in 1887.
So it's haunted.
It's also very dangerous.
And haunted.
If you want. It's a military restricted area. Originally it was used for quarantining tuberculosis patients and was later used as a defense cadet training area.
So double haunted.
Sure.
So we're talking about, I mean, if you like to believe, and just putting it out there, I don't personally believe in spirituality, energy. To be honest, I'm more of the Scully and you're more of the Mulder in this case.
Yes.
And so some people would maybe wager that when you have an area that has been affected by so much tragedy that it itself becomes this maybe negative energy sinkhole. All of these sort of disasters that kept reoccurring, all this tragedy may have led to some sort of curse.
Bad juju.
Yeah, bad juju.
Now, Harold Holt was given a special pass to use the beach because he was Prime Minister and he knew a couple of generals. He assured them that he would be fine.
You'd also have to assume that, like, when the Prime Minister goes out to the beach, that for security reasons, it would be preferable if he goes out to a little privately controlled military beach.
No, you see, the problem is it wasn't controlled because it was military. It was controlled because lots of bad shit happens there and it's incredibly dangerous to swim.
Oh, okay. So the military was like their leader literally rocks up. It was like, hey, I'd like to go for a swim in one of probably the most dangerous beaches in Australia. Keep in mind, our beaches, of course, our normal beaches contain blue-ringed octopus.
Blue bottles. Sharks.
Stonefish. This is our normal beach. This is what we subject ourselves to normally. Just to put it out there how dangerous Australian beaches can be.
Add to that bad juju and rocks, horrible currents, bad high tides. Yeah, this is open and shut, isn't it?
It seems to me that it is pretty open and shut. I assume he was drowned by a legion of sickly ghosts that dragged him to the bottom of the sea.
Well, as it is now, you can't actually get down to that beach because Surf Life in Australia rates it as extremely hazardous, and they've basically blocked it off.
Is that because it is hazardous, or because that there's a huge government conspiracy keeping people out of the area because of a possible UFO abduction?
I'm pretty sure it's because of the Chinese subs off the coast, but, you know, we'll keep going. So, on Sunday, the 17th of December, Mr. Holt, his wife, his rumoured lover,
Ooh,
oh yes,
saucy.
we have a rumoured lover.
Why was Marjorie Gillespie his rumoured lover? Just because she was his next door neighbour? Is that all there was to it?
Yes, and she spent a lot of time around there while Mrs. Holt was not home.
Yeah, but I mean...
She's fervently denied this for like the last 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, however long it's been.
Understandably so. I mean, like, I had a lot of neighbours growing up and none of them were my lovers.
You were also a kid. You were growing up. Anyway, Marjorie's daughter was there, as was...
Possible daughter of Harold Holt.
No.
No?
Timeline doesn't work like that.
That doesn't work like that?
No.
We don't have a secret love child?
No, we don't have a secret love
Get me
child.
all excited here and then taking it away.
It was Marjorie's friend, Harold Holt, Marjorie's daughter, and Marjorie's daughter's boyfriend.
So this was a large group that went out to the beach that day?
Yes.
And they didn't see him drown?
No.
At all?
No.
UFO?
Sub. They arrived at noon, and Holt decided to go for a swim in spite of the fact that there were huge waves, a horrible wind, and breaking crests. Understandably, with big waves, he disappeared after only a few minutes.
See, this seems really, really strange to me. Obviously, Harold Holt was a guy who he knew how to go swimming. He understood conditions. Why would he walk into this? Like, this does happen all the time. I think there are a lot of people in Australia, because we have anywhere from 10 to 30 drowning deaths every summer. It's just an occurrence of Australian life, especially if you're going to go out into the beach. Even the best swimmers get caught up in rips. And a rip is an undercurrent. It can grab you, suck you out, throw you around. You get very tired fighting against them and can drown. That's predominantly how most people drown in Australian beaches. But Harold Holt, this is what blows my mind about this case, Holly. Shouldn't he have realised what he was walking into?
Shouldn't his bodyguards have realised what he was walking into? I want to know where those fuckers were.
Did they have bodyguards back then? I feel like Australia in the 60s is very similar to how the Americans portrayed the Prime Minister in the episode of The Simpsons. You know, when he's in the...
the rubber dinghy in the dam.
Yeah, he's in this big rubber tube, and they're like, I'm going to take this all the way to the Prime Minister. Hey, Gus! And he's just sitting in the middle of the tube with a beer on his chest.
I have to point out that this was less than a month after John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Someone should have been watching this bastard.
So, see, you waited all this time to bring this up. So what you're saying is
Kennedy
there was
was
a mass conspiracy in order to eliminate the world leaders so that the reptilian army can take over the world.
Yeah, but they never tried anything with the British. Why would you go for the Australian first?
It is a crazy coincidence, though. It's one of the most volatile times in our history. You've got Vietnam just on the corner. You've had the assassination of John F. Kennedy, which was a massive... I mean, John F. Kennedy was the man who got everyone to the moon.
I would like to point out that in Australian politics at this time, Harold Holt was part of the 1967 referendum giving Indigenous people... giving the government the ability to legislate for Indigenous people. He was also the one who relaxed the White Australia policy, and he was succeeded by not the nicest guy in the world.
So basically you're saying he was trying to make inroads into integrating our indigenous population, giving them rights. He suddenly dies and then a racist takes over.
I'm not saying that.
For legal purposes, we are not suggesting that the person who took over
John McEwen
was a quote-unquote racist.
We are not saying that in any form or implying
I think I did, though, about 2 seconds ago. But he's dead now, right? Is he dead? John McEwen dead?
Well, he was in his 60s in the 60s.
Oh, well, that's fine. He's dead now. I can say whatever I want about him.
So, yeah, you have a big political turmoil in Australia. You have big political turmoil around the world. China is getting more powerful. Vietnam is winding down. And then suddenly, our Prime Minister goes missing.
And as far as you can tell, he had no bodyguards with him.
As far as I can find, he had no one watching him except for his friends.
It's very interesting.
Now, there were a couple of theories that went along with this as soon as word started going out.
So who got the word out initially then? Was it was the group he was with?
It was the group he was with.
And how did they respond? Like, they're obviously at a military installation. So I assume the army came out?
The party raised the alert and they went to the army base. They found a large group of Navy divers, RAAF choppers, army personnel and police. They all surrounded this small, tiny, tiny beach. Couldn't find hide nor hair of him.
And just for, again, listeners, an RAAF chopper, that's the Royal Australian Air Force. So you've got all these people there, well trained. The alert happens very, very quickly, so he's gone. Nothing can be found at all.
Nothing at all.
Completely.
Yep, but that's not surprising. If you get caught in a rip, you're going to end up like hundreds of k's off the coast.
a powerful rip is going to... the only reason you can have any resistance against a riptide like that is you're fighting against it. So as soon as you've drowned, you're gone. You're off there. You're floating out into the ocean. There is no resistance anymore. You're basically a leaf on the wind.
Quick PSA: if you're ever caught in a rip, just let go. The more you relax,
just relax, and float.
Yes, don't fight it. Just relax.
She doesn't mean just accept the banality of life and the fact that you're now dead and just drown to death. That's not what she's saying at all. I think.
You never know. So our theories started off pretty mild.
So before we get to the theories, though, obviously there was a quote-unquote constitutional crisis, which I mentioned earlier. Is there any big events that happened preceding his death before we get to the theories? Okay,
so Harold Holt disappears. They can't find hide nor hair of him, and the Governor-General was forced to receive a letter the day of his disappearance outlining 3 things they can do. If the body is found, if Holt was alive, and if it wasn't found. Now, the Governor-General had to step in and use a very underutilised part of his constitutional power. You see, this is why we need all these steps, Matthew, in case we lose someone like this. Don't bump the Queen.
Please. Republican forever.
So basically, what happened to Gough Whitlam had to happen to Harold Holt. They had to bump Holt out of his seat and bring John McEwen into his place as PM in order to keep the country running. They couldn't leave Holt in his placeholder not knowing where he was or what he was doing, because that would have stagnated the parliament.
And again, as I mentioned earlier, because there was no body, you can't rule a death. What if for some magic reason he'd been swept out to sea, wound up on an island, a small island, maybe with another guy called Gilligan, a professor as well, perhaps.
Or a volleyball.
Movie
Wilson.
star. Yeah, or a volleyball. And he might come back. Stranger things have happened. But in order for the country to keep running, you have to find a replacement. So this is unprecedented. So, again, John Kennedy's been assassinated. Vietnam is starting. China is rising as a superpower. We're having a constitutional crisis. This is sort of all this unprecedented history around the drowning death of one man, and that's why this case is so interesting.
Now, absolutely no federal inquiry was conducted into the death on the grounds that it was a waste of time and money without a body. I've never heard of any other case like that.
That is actually very interesting. The fact that this was the leader of a country, you would think that there would be some sort of official government inquest into it.
Especially considering how many politicians love to place blame.
Again, my only guess is that it was just a more relaxed time in Australia.
Or everyone got bumped up a level and they were happy to do it.
I could only imagine, we had one of our less than worthy prime ministers, Tony Abbott. He loved going out to the beach. There are plenty of unfortunate photos of him in
budgie smugglers.
Very small. Yeah, a budgie smuggler. That's it's an Australian euphemism. It just means the balls and the dick, the bulge at the front of a Speedo. Did we not mention the show is not for children? Probably should have done that before I said dick and balls.
Weird crap in Australia.
So, yeah, Abbott used to go out. He used to jump into the ocean, go for big swims. If he'd disappeared, there would have been massive investigations in our day and age. And I only wonder, it's just maybe Australians were just well, fuck it. He disappeared in the water. There's not really much we can do about it. In our day and age, I couldn't imagine. There would be fucking boats out there for hours.
Days.
And days and weeks and months, constantly pinging with sonars, and the military would be involved, and all of this sort of stuff. But
they're still looking for that plane.
Yeah.
3 years.
Exactly, yeah. The, MH...
370.
370, yeah, which is still floating around. They're still looking for it. So, yeah, I can only imagine that in our day and age it would occur, but... technology was very limited then, and Australia has always been a few steps behind in military tech. America and China always seem to be ahead of us anyway. But what more could they really have done with the technology that they had at the time? And so I can kind of understand why in the 1960s they would not be having a full federal inquiry into it.
Also, because...
Unless there's a conspiracy.
Uh-huh. Because... this was the first time anything like this had happened, as far as I know, in the world, but definitely in Australia. There wasn't actually an underlying in Victorian law in order to provide a mechanism for a coronial inquest into someone presumed dead.
So this could just be a case of it never happened before, there wasn't procedures in place, so it was something that would have to be implemented after the fact.
There was no precedent, so there was nothing to do. But a 108-page report was submitted by the police to Parliament regarding what happened. This included statements and everything. However, when I went looking for it, it was heavily redacted, so,
It's interesting that to this day, is it still redacted?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Happened in the 60s?
Yep.
Conspiracy.
Mm-hmm.
That's my conspiracy voice. That's what's going to happen when I get to talk about conspiracies.
And this is my answer to it all the time. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, so that's pretty much the wrap on the case. Oh, no, we've got one more thing.
We've got one thing. In 1985 and then again in 2003, the Victoria Missing Persons Unit formally reopened the 161 drowning no-body cases, and Holt was one of them. In 2005, the coroner finally found that Holt drowned under accidental circumstances. This was almost 40 years after he actually vanished.
Jesus.
That's a long, cold case.
I think that is a matter of, though, once you hit that 40-year mark, and Holt was, in his...
59 he was.
He was 59.
Yeah.
So the coroner can make the fair assessment that he is dead at that point anyway, and so you can, with some confidence, close the case.
Yeah, at 99 years since birth, in an era where the male life expectancy was 75, I'm pretty sure we can just chuck this one out.
Yep.
Now, on to the very fun and exciting part where Matthew gets to scream conspiracy all the time.
These are some of the theories, and again, I'm skeptical. Once we go through the theories, I think both of us are just going to.
Nope. Yep. Nope.
Well, we're both going to say what we think happened. Based on the information, based on the research, we're going to come away and be like, okay, this is probably what happened to these people, this person, and that's probably going to be the format of the show going forward. You know, we're going to throw out a couple of theories, we're going to talk about those theories, and then we're going to pretty much come to a conclusion, our own personal conclusion. Do you want to, you do a theory, I'll do a theory?
Yeah, I'll start with the sane one first, shall I?
All right, you go for it.
So based upon the fact that Holt was taking opioids, he did have a bum shoulder, water on the lungs, wasn't a very good swimming spot. Doug Anthony, one of the cabinet ministers, spoke out about Holt's depression shortly before his death, although this was rejected by Sam Holt, Harold Holt's son, the biographer Tom Frame, and Malcolm Fraser, a later PM but was also a cabinet minister.
So this is the suicide theory.
This is the suicide theory, that he knew what he was doing when he went out there and he had no intention of walking back onto that beach.
There are easier ways to kill yourself.
Drowning is one of the worst. Only self-immolation can possibly be worse.
Exactly right. I mean, you literally, you start breathing water because your brain forces you to breathe. It's a horrible way to die. And if he had tons and tons of morphine lying about, why not just overdose on morphine?
Because you can always come back from morphine. Someone can pump your stomach. Whereas you can't really pump your stomach from seawater if they can't find your body.
Look, this is also a time in Australia where we didn't have any gun regulation too. It would have been very easy for him to go out, get a gun and shoot himself in the head. And
but he was Prime Minister, and Prime Minister does afford some form of dignity.
I don't know. This one I don't buy. Also, his family was sitting there on the beach. Like, no one's going to subject their family to that on purpose.
There have been suicides of people in the next room slitting their wrists in the bathtub.
Yeah, I mean, this is really dark and very depressing. Thank you for that. But
you're welcome.
I just don't find it very plausible. It seems a very, like, okay, let's say he did want to commit suicide. He had planned on doing it via drowning. Why not just go, okay, I'm going to go down to the beach by myself. He has clearance to jump onto this beach and go for a swim, and he drowns that way. Like, why do it in front of your family?
Can't answer that for you.
That's like, obviously there are people who have, you know, grabbed the shotgun and, like you said, blown their heads off in front of, again, not a children's podcast.
I'm pretty sure people have worked that out by now.
I hope so. But yeah, like, you do hear of people, like, shooting themselves in front of their family. Like, it's a big, you know, look at what I'm doing in front of everyone. So there obviously there's a precedent for suicide with, you know, a big public show of it. But I don't know, like, going out to drown, it just seems like if you definitively wanted to show your family that you committed suicide, you could find a much more clear way to do that.
We will never know.
So the next theory that they have is the spy theory. Now, Anthony Gray, in 1983, theorized that Holt was a spy for China, and a Chinese sub picked him up just picked him up in the ocean.
Yep.
Well.
Open the top, climb in, let's go.
Now, this theory's been widely ridiculed. Zara Holt said it was ridiculous, as Holt didn't even like Chinese food. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Ron
Titcombe, yes.
Titcombe?
Yes.
Is that how you pronounce that? Titcombe. Titcombe.
Pretty sure it's Titcombe, but whatever.
Okay, well, I'm going to pronounce it the correct way. So Ron Titcombe is apparently also someone who agreed with this theory. So let's unpack this one a little bit. The theory that someone is a spy is not a new one. It happens all the time, especially when people disappear under strange circumstances. We're going to look at the Somerton Man. That's going to be one that's probably going to send me insane by the end of it when we do our research on it. But the idea that a man could swim out to the middle, to a far enough way, like he's at a military base that's obviously set up for naval procedures. You know, they talk about the Navy divers coming out to rescue or at least try and find his body. So obviously they're using sonar. They're obviously using detection methods. So if he, like, Holly just did the motion of putting in the scuba diving stuff, but then where would he have the equipment? Like, it's one, you're not going to be able to swim down to the submarine because obviously you can't get down to those pressure depths without dying.
I'm sure the theory is actually that the subsurface he climbed in and they drove
That's
away.
what I'm saying. I'm just discounting a couple of things before we get to that. So
Screen door on a submarine.
So he swims out as far as he can. The sub rises. He gets in the sub. Then he gets taken away to China. And then he becomes a Chinese citizen for the rest of his life.
Black guy in the middle of China, but he's a Chinaman. Like,
I mean, 1967. It's not something that you're not going to see. I mean, obviously, we're talking about the 60s. Nixon was just about to go back to China to start negotiations. That's one of Nixon's accomplishments, was that he opened up diplomatic relations with China again. But yeah, it's too silly. Like, again, why wouldn't you not just pick him up in a boat?
speedboat drive away.
You know, if you're going to do this clandestine operation, then obviously you're just going to send out an old shitty fishing boat to pick him up. But then you're also suggesting that this guy who's high on morphine, his arm's fucked, his heart's probably fucked, he's got to go out to the middle of the ocean, get inside the boat. Like, he's got to get far enough away that these boats can't be detected or the submarine can't be detected, and then he gets taken away. So I think this theory is absolute rubbish based on all of those, or like my reasoning of it. However, Zara Holt saying that Holt wouldn't have defected because of his apparent aversion to Chinese food is just as ridiculous as the theory itself. Right? I'm not necessarily a fan of sushi. I would like to go to Japan.
I do have to point out something here in regards to...
What was she thinking?
I don't know. I'm not Zara Holt. In regards to the spy theory, what better place to have a spy than as the leader of a fucking country? Why would you need him to defect?
Yeah, it's stupid.
If he's worked his way up to the top, he can then align with you, and you've got no problems from that country from then on. Why are you stealing your best asset out of the country?
Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. No one's going to approach the leader about being a possible spy. Look at it this way. We can use a moral example. At the moment, Donald Trump is allegedly...
A Russian spy?
Allegedly conspiring with Russia, a foreign power. They're very blatant about it, and it's pretty much on Front Street. And so far, Trump hasn't been incriminated or investigated. Well, he's been investigated, but he hasn't been convicted of anything. So, yeah, you're right there. It's like, if you've already got this guy, it's the 1960s, so information isn't what it is today. It's the 1960s. Your prime minister is a great spy asset for your country. So why would you want him out of the country?
You want puppet ruler.
Why would you even rescue him in the first place? So yeah, it's pretty silly. So yeah, I think we can put the nail in the coffin on that one.
Well, this one's almost as bad. As well as the morphine in his system, someone phrased in a letter after his death that he may have been under the influence of a slow-release drug placed in refreshments picked up on the way to the beach. Who has that much planning to know that Harold Holt will definitely stop here and definitely buy this particular brand of ice cream?
I think this is more plausible than the spy theory. I mean, like you said, he was a bit of a controversial figure at the time with what he was doing for the Indigenous population of Australia. So, you know, again, though, like, if you're going to do a slow-release drug and he's already high on morphine all the time...
Just pile more morphine into him.
It seems like a bit of pissing in the wind with that particular theory. And what? So just some random spies working for someone decided to drug him? Is there
sitting there poking a syringe into every ice cream? No one else in the party showed any sign of being drugged. So either he was like secretly syringing just Harold Holt's food, or this is a bogus theory.
So who presented this theory?
It was in one of his biographies that a letter had been received,
Yep.
but I don't think the letter was actually signed.
Okay, so
One of those letter to the editor things.
Ah, right. Okay, sort of like the Jack the Ripper editors letters.
Oh yeah, totally.
Which were quite possibly written by the newspapers themselves in order to make Jack the Ripper more notorious, who we'll have to cover as well at a later date, because the reason I say that we should do this is because Jack the Ripper, one of the potential suspects, I was going to say suspects for the Jack the Ripper murders, was an Australian. And there was another guy, a British guy, who was also a suspect, who came back and forth between Australia as well. He was a bit of a con artist. So we actually have a few links to the Jack the Ripper case. So ready to go crazy on that one later. So yeah, a random letter shows up, says that he was drugged, his refreshments. What do they mean by refreshments? Is that his bottle of drink? Is that his ice cream?
I think it was an ice cream and a drink or something. It was the 60s. What more can you get from a corner store?
Is it like that episode of The Simpsons? This is twice I brought up The Simpsons, but Homer gets stuck on this island because he comes up with... can't remember, he invents some sort of technology which will help people, and so he gets taken to an island because they don't want this revolution, and they keep drugging him, and at one stage they hand him a bowl of ice cream and there are a bunch of pills in the ice cream.
And syringes and...
Yeah. Is that how they did it?
No, I'm pretty sure it's not how that would have worked.
That's what I keep thinking of. So our next theory is one that was postulated by Scott Mannion. He created and directed a film in 2016 about how Harold Holt became a defector to Russia.
China.
To China, again.
Yeah, everything at that era was China.
Okay, so this film, I've never heard of it. I assume it was a very small release, very cheaply made, released on YouTube probably. Have you seen the film?
No, I think it was a Sundance film.
Oh, okay. And that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But
I remember seeing title cards for it. I don't remember seeing a trailer. So that's what kind of scope we're looking at.
So again, what evidence did he present? Is there anything else?
That's what the film was. It was basically pulling the spy and the suicide and everything together into one big theory of slush.
Right, so the defected theory and the spy theory are very much interconnected. Okay, so the next theory is the assassination attempt. The leader of the opposition had an attempt on his life by a student who disagreed with his pro-war stance. Now, after Holt's disappearance, police found what appeared to be a bullet hole in his office, which to this day has been unexplained, which bolstered the assassination theory.
If you've got both sides of Parliament fighting for war and you've got a student out there who's pissed off at the government... Back then, students actually had a union that did big political movements and shit.
They still do.
No, they don't. They don't really do very much. They're tiny compared to what they used to be.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have this day. You have they're very small, but there are more of them. So you've got different student unions that are involved in different things. You still have the young Liberals and the young Labour parties. If you're getting that much into politics, that young kids maybe... go get laid or do some...
Pull your head out of a book and go play a video game.
Drugs or something. I don't know. Get out of politics. It's too early to be involved in politics. You gotta wait till you're at least in your later 20s. So, yeah, look, this has... Again, though, the suggestion is that this is this really elaborate plot to kill this guy. Although, obviously, the leader of the opposition had an attempt on his life, Kennedy had an attempt on his life. We're talking about guns, bullets. It's a very direct method of killing, so...
Sheep that was cheap and easy to get to.
Exactly. So, was there any evidence of this assassin? Was there someone hiding out? Was there an unknown person on the beach that they didn't... Because there was no one around other than these people on the beach.
Well, I have a feeling that this assassination attempt was kind of to do with the drug theory, except instead of the slow-acting refreshment stand, you've got someone hiding on the hill with a sniper rifle, just knocking him out while he's behind a wave.
So he goes out swimming and they shoot him while he's in the ocean.
Yeah, or wound him so he can't get back, something like that.
Wouldn't you think there'd be blood that would come back
Sharks.
to the shore? Still leave a mess of blood.
That's a lot of water to get blood out of, honey.
Well, I mean that eventually the blood, returns to the...
When sharks bite people on the beaches nowadays, there aren't blood patches that come back to the shore. There's a lot of water to dilute that blood in.
All right, so, okay, let's say that this one is slightly plausible then. That there is someone standing up on the hill or in
hiding
close proximity.
In a bush or something.
But then the thing is, this was a restricted military area.
But there was still no one watching them.
I mean, that is true, but you'd still have to get past those initial security checks to get into the area.
The beach itself was not in the military complex. It was beside the military complex. You could reach it. They could see the beach.
Yeah.
But doesn't necessarily mean that you had to do any checks to get to it.
All right. Well, we'll say that the assassination attempt may be plausible.
50-50, we'll go.
I'm not going 50-50. I'll give it 17.
That's a really random number.
That's how much I feel. That's how strongly I feel about it. I'll give it 17.
Okay, so forgetting that one, our next one was kind of the same. It was a botched kidnapping. Because Holt was planning to increase the amount of troops going into Vietnam, someone tried to kidnap him to prevent this from happening, to stall Parliament, to prevent the deployment, all of that stuff that you hear about people hating Vietnam for.
So who postulated that theory?
That would be Scott Cooper, who was a writer. As far as I remember, he was a biographer as well. Apparently Holt has had a few of those. And I think that was in the 70s, I think that one came out.
Okay. I mean, this is interesting, but when it comes to the way government works, there has to be a majority of people who usually push the agenda anyway. So even if you try to kidnap Holt in order to send a message to government, hey, stop sending our young men overseas, because just like the US, Australia was conscripting soldiers to fight in Vietnam. We were support for the American army over there. It was a horrible war, and I think everyone can agree it was a massive fuck-up. So at the time, you were dealing with a lot of very angry people. See, Vietnam was a very important part in history and a very important part in Australian history, because it was the first failing of the people's respect for authority. From the Vietnam era, you got an amazing array of music from Australia, as well as plays and film, and this all came about because of how people felt with the Vietnam War, with having to send their children overseas. I remember actually my grandmother being very worried about my uncle being conscripted for Vietnam. So there was real fear. And when you're having your children forcibly taken away from you, which, we'll also talk about later, I'm sure, when we talk about things like Stolen Generation, I'm sure that's going to fit into one of our podcasts at some stage. But it's the having your son taken away, I can understand exactly why he's going to be kidnapped. You would want to send a message to the government saying, stop taking our children.
You take my children, I take your leader, something like that.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. Does he have... So what is Scott Cooper's... does he have a method of abduction?
Not as far as I could find. I have the feeling it was something like the Chinese submarine theory.
It's always back to this goddamn Chinese submarine.
Yeah. Unfortunately, back then, yellow paranoia was in fashion.
Oh, can we say that?
That's what it was called.
That's what they called that?
That's what they're called.
I feel uncomfortable.
The yellow plague. Don't you remember that?
I mean, to be honest, you know more about Australian history than I do, but I don't know the terminology.
Yeah. When
in
the Chinese...
context of history, that is what they called it.
Yeah.
We do not subscribe to that.
For those who can't see my hands, there are air quotes around these statements. Yeah. But yeah, back in the 60s, 70s, when the White Australia policy was relaxed, the Asians were allowed to come in, the Chinese, Japanese, all those guys, and it was called the Yellow Plague because all these people who weren't white were suddenly coming into Australia.
That's what ignorant 60s white Australians called it.
70s.
70s. Not us.
It was related.
Damn.
Yeah.
This is
I blame my parents.
We're talking about our history, not us directly.
Direct cut off at 2000.
So don't send me your angry tweets.
Actually do that, because then we know you're listening.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, I've often said if you feel like you've made it in the internet sphere, you have to have a lot of hate.
All right, you're gonna love this next one.
So, this one's kind of fun. This is probably the most fun out of all of these. Harold Holt disappeared because he was taken by a UFO, aka a UFO, aka bullshit. Now, Holly, why do people think that he was taken by a UFO? Is this just an example of, yeah, dude was taken by a UFO?
It was the height of the UFO rush in America, so why couldn't it happen in Australia?
But did anyone say anything? Was there?
Of course not, but that doesn't happen most of the time.
So there was no weird lights
No.
a couple of days before. There was no crop circles. There was nothing like that at all.
No. However,
So someone was just like, a UFO did it.
20 years later, and
Yep.
this is going to be one of our later episodes, Fred Valentish vanished over the Bass Strait, complaining about seeing a UFO.
Oh yeah,
This happened near the same area.
Oh, okay.
Bass Strait Triangle.
Ooh,
Ooh.
we're going to talk about that then a little bit later on. That's going to be a cool episode. I get to put on my tinfoil hat for that one.
Oh yeah, you're going to love it.
Look, usually when it comes to UFO abduction theory being introduced in a disappearance, you do have to have some other supporting stuff. Like, obviously, you were talking about the plane that disappeared when it was taken by the UFO. But that was a long time after the fact, so generally with these sort of theories, you have to have a couple of extra things. There has to be sightings a couple of days or weeks before.
Noises, burns. You know.
The area has to be known for it. You can talk about cattle mutilation, animal mutilation.
Crop circles.
Crop circles are another one. There has to be, usually with these sort of theories, there has to be something extra. I just think this is someone grasping at straws. They were just like, well, if he didn't get murdered and he didn't drown, then I don't know why it's suddenly an American farming hick, but he was like, must be a UFO took him. So that's all I got for that. We got our last theory here. Holly, take it away.
He was murdered
By a seagull.
by a shark. No. Gary Simmons, one of the naval divers, he asserted that he took Harold Holt's body from his home out to a waiting fishing boat the night before he was reported missing while swimming at Cheviot Beach. This guy has been harassing politicians since 1999 about his theory.
And so I didn't realize this. Harold Holt was reported missing on the 17th of December.
Yes, I've said that a few times now.
That's my birthday.
Minus about 20 odd years, yes.
Yeah.
21.
There you go. 17th of December 1988 I was born. So I have
Just give away that private information. If people start stealing your identity, that's your own problem.
Well, they know how old I am. Like I've said on multiple podcasts that I'm 29. So you use a little bit of math and they should be able to work out how when I was born. But that's this is a crazy person, right? This is just a crazy man who is very sad and maybe took some bad acid in the 60s and is under the impression.
Well, you're coming out 32 years later to say, oh, by the way, I moved the body before they actually reported him missing. Someone had a fight with him and killed him. 32 years.
Right, so the conspiracy theory here is that this guy, Gary Simmons, was sent to retrieve Harold Holt's body the night before.
Yep.
Then all of his family, who are also in on the conspiracy, they go down to the beach, they raise the false flag alarm.
Yep.
And
he dumped Holt's body into
Yep.
a fishing boat and then sunk it off the coast.
right. What does he say that the reason that Harold Holt was murdered the night before, does he offer that, or is he just, I was part of the cleanup crew, I didn't ask any questions?
Just following orders.
Just following
that
orders.
hated quote.
Was he military? Was Gary Simmons, does anyone know whether he was military or not, or was he
I couldn't find any records, but considering the era, that's not surprising.
Yeah.
He could have been part of the naval diving team, or he could have had a dream.
And when did he came out about this in the 1991?
And from 1999, he's been lobbying politicians to admit that they did this.
Okay.
So turn of the century.
Right. Where is he today? Is he just
probably sitting on Parliament House? You never know.
Just waiting for his moment in the sun.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting. Like, usually around these sort of big events, you're always going to have people who need to be connected to it in some way, shape, or form. Simmons obviously found a way to be connected to it in his own little special fashion. And, you know, this comes down to, I think, mental health over a lot of things. It's kind of interesting, though. Like, it's kind of an interesting idea that there was some, you know, maybe there was some sort of family dispute over Harold Holt's lover, and his wife killed him over it.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say more likely his daughter killed him.
She panics. Right, what have I done? I've just killed him with an iron. Back in the day, in the 60s, an iron was a literal big
cast iron
chunk
thing.
of iron, right?
Yeah.
I hope people who lived in the 60s and 70s listen to us and are like, oh yeah, they're factually accurate. Or, of course, we had fucking electrical irons, you morons. But at any rate, she kills him with the iron because she finds out about his lover or some other implement. She freaks out. It would be a massive public humiliation for this family. It would have greater repercussions for all of Australia. How could they trust their leaders if their leaders aren't these sanctimonious, holier than thou figures? So she calls up the first person she can, so probably the Deputy Prime Minister, and he's like, well, we can't have this. I'm going to be Prime Minister soon. We're going to have to create this very easy transition of power.
Easy. Easy.
So what do? We contact this expert Navy team. They're going to have to get rid of this body. They're going to have to take it out to the middle of the ocean, and we're going to set up this elaborate drowning. And Gary Simmons was like, yes, sir. Can do, sir. And he wraps up the body, gets it all prepped, him and his team. They put it out there, and they detonate it, and then it just sinks to the bottom of the... or they just... put a hole in the boat and just let it drown.
Fill his pockets full of rocks and shove him off.
So, yeah. I think that's the most plausible theory. I don't really.
I was going to say, I feel ashamed of you if
that
that's
was
what
all,
you think is
that was
possible.
just me bullshitting. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. Like, that's kind of a alternate history sort of story.
Well, that's the great one to end on then, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the UFO one could have been the fun one, but there's just no other UFO stuff going on in the...
vicinity at that time.
In the vicinity. And that pretty much wraps up Harold Holt with that last theory.
Yes.
Because really, to this day, we don't know what happened. The body was never recovered. And life just continued on. There was an election not too long after the fact. There was a new leader put in place. And everything just moved on. And Australia has this mystery that will never be solved about the death of one of our leaders. And to this day, what's quite interesting is that it's never happened again. We've never had a leader die in office.
That's because the public service are smart enough to send people to watch Tony Abbott when he goes swimming. I mean, they might not want to because of how he looks, but, you know, we'll leave that alone.
He's definitely out there.
He's scrawny.
So, Holly, did you have anything else that needed to be added on this case? We're going to put up some sources as well. You can check out all this information when we release, when the podcast is released. They'll be in the show notes. So you can go do your own research. Thanks for joining us for the very first episode of Weird Crap in Australia. We're going to be producing as many of these as often as we can, so probably maybe one episode a week. If you have stories that you think are weird, and everyone has a story, you know. And
my auntie Muriel found a skeleton in her back closet, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I've even heard stories about certain areas of Australian bushland which truckers won't stop in because they're attacked by some sort of creature or demonic presence or whatever. There are so many of these stories out there in Australia. There are hauntings, alien abductions. We'd love to hear from you as well, as long as you're balanced. I don't want any emails being sent in about how you were abducted and probed. But if you've got an interesting story to tell about your area or your life, we'd love to hear them. Send us any leads that you have. You can do that on our Twitter account, which is @ModernMeltdown. We also have a Facebook page, The Modern Meltdown. You can find us there. We also have our website. There's an option to leave comments on episodes. That's themodernmeltdown.com. And we're also on the Instagrams. So please send us your info. We've got a lot of episodes planned. And it's a range of things. Like sometimes we're going to touch on Australian serial killers. We've got UFO stories. We have
myths and legends.
Yeah, we've got monsters. We've got cryptids. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff coming up. So thanks very much for listening to this episode. If you know who killed Harold Holt, let us know so we can wrap this one up. But I've been your host, Matthew Soul. Joining me today was the exceptionally wonderful Holly Hunt. I'm legally obligated to say that. She is my wife.
Hey, no, he's not. He's just financially obligated.
We'll be back next time, and until then, stay safe and keep an eye out.